All right, it is 9 o'clock on this Tuesday, December 30th, New Year's Eve, and this is the Live Zone Primetime. I'm producer Chris, and that is Tony P. Thank you so much for spending your New Year's Eve with us, whether you're watching on Fox Local or you're watching on Fox 5 DC's YouTube page. Tony P., welcome back.
Good to be back, my friend.
You spent the morning in Boston. You made it back in time for the show.
Sure did. I would not miss this. I love, being online is fine, but being in my actual office, my studio here, as opposed to my mother's office back home, is a heck of a lot better. And also, in the words of John Denver, I was leaving on a jet plane.
That's right.
And I was feeling that vibe today. I have to tell you, both times I was flying, when I flew out about a week ago now back home, I flew home really early. I got to see the skies like heaven opening up. The white clouds is beautiful, right? Same thing coming home. It was the sunset this time, going over DC.
Nice.
Just that faint sunset, a truly beautiful experience going out and coming back here to DC. And now it's the eve before New Year's, my friend.
Before New
It's like when I was a kid, when I was younger, I used to always say when I would leave school for like the school vacation, I'll see you next year.
See you next year. You were that guy. You were that guy. But that is obviously our big story tonight, because that is what a lot of people are talking about. Final preparations underway in New York earlier today. That's the video you see in the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Ensure a spectacular celebration for the more than 1 million people expected to ring in the new year in Times Square. So, of course, what did they do? They did an iconic Times Square ball test. They took a test run with a 2-minute journey to the top of that 139-foot pole before its 1-minute plunge into 2026. The left-hand side of the screen, that is a live picture courtesy of EarthCam right now of the ball. Well, now it just went to an ad break, but that's what happens. You got to time these things just right, and they're going to be.
I should have bought one of those. That would be a good gift for Christmas.
Yeah, all right.
Somebody.
Nespresso, not sponsoring our show.
Already writing it down.
Next year. Sponsor. Anyway, the 9th and newest iteration of that crystal ball. It's called the Constellation Ball. It is the largest yet, measures 12.5 feet in diameter, and weighs 12,350 pounds. It's also adorned with 5,280 crystals and LED light pucks, which is nearly double the number of crystals of the previous ball. So they're definitely planning a big show. And like we talked about last night, at the same time, you see the American flag on those video monitors. And that is because there will also be a special celebration of America's 250th birthday as we enter 2026, 250 years since 1776. So there will actually be a second ball drop shortly after the one at midnight, around 12:05, and that will be in honor of that. And you can see it all lit up in red, white, and blue right there.
Beautiful stuff. And I have to say, the ball this year looks a lot smoother. The lights aren't as sometimes they were kind of more like edgy.
Yeah, it was very
it was very crystallized. You could see
it looked like Epcot.
Right. It was like very they had like the shapes.
Angular.
They were angular. They were protruding. It's a good way. We had a lot of geometry words tonight. They were protruding outward. They weren't very smooth or rounded off. This is so smooth and rounded off. And it has, again, the LED show with the crystals. I like the balance of both. I'm excited to see this. And what's fascinating about the 250 for America, it really gets to the point of how young we are as a country. We're like a baby compared to most of the developed world out there and most of the continents. Okay, there are countries that go back thousands of years, and then there's us, 250, that little pea brain on the scale of the world order. So it's very, very fascinating stuff, and I'm looking forward to both. I wonder if maybe for future stuff, or if they're doing it maybe this year, they're timing that second drop to when maybe the first Revolutionary War was starting, or like what time the Declaration was signed. I'm not sure if that's happening here. But maybe for the next time, if it hasn't happened this year, maybe for 300 they should do like right the time that they may have signed the Declaration, the time when the Revolutionary War started to break out in 1776, or something like that. Maybe
that's one way to do it. Now,
not to be too many suggestions.
Times Square is all well and good, but let's talk about our hometown, the DMV, Washington, D.C., because the place to be on New Year's Eve may, as a matter of fact, be the Washington Monument, which for some reason you cannot see right now because it is not lit up at all. That is actually a live picture from our Fox 5 Skycam at the wharf. And now normally you would see the Washington Monument all lit up there, but the lights are all off right now for some reason. But tomorrow night, the Washington Monument will be all lit up, and it will be lit up kind of like that picture you see in the top left-hand corner to celebrate America 250. They're going to light it up, illuminate it. They're going to project all of these images onto it, and it's going to start off as the world's tallest birthday candle. It will be illuminated as part of a 6-night projection. Mapping spectacle is what they're calling it. That will transform the obelisk into an immersive, luminous canvas telling the story of the nation's discovery, expansion, independence, and its future. So tomorrow will mark the opening night. I still can't believe they haven't turned the lights back on. It is completely dark right now. I'm going to leave this live picture up just in case we get lucky and we see them turn them back on. But tomorrow's opening night will feature a special New Year's Eve countdown. It will mark the official arrival of America's 250th year. The monument will be illuminated each night through January 5th, so you have a couple opportunities to head down there and see it. Each evening's presentation will project a sweeping visual narrative projected onto it. Tomorrow night's projection begins at 7 p.m. It runs until shortly after midnight, so you'll have a while to make it down there and check it out. Each night after that, it will be illuminated from 7 p.m. until 10 p.m. Fox 5's Josh Rosenthal will have much more on this story coming up tonight at 10 here on Fox Local, and hopefully by the time hopefully the lights are on.
Ivy, this is really weird.
When we see him in our next hour.
Is there a malfunction is the question,
No,
or are they prepping
guessing,
it for the illumination
yep,
and they're doing a test
That's what my
run
guess is, exactly.
Things of that nature.
You may have seen on social media some video from yesterday when they were doing a test run. We had heard they may not be doing one tonight, but it looks like that included turning all the lights off, unfortunately.
That's scary, right there.
I was kind of hoping, we would get a little sneak peek and a little glimpse. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting, because as we know, America is celebrating its 250th birthday, and we are entering our 250th year tomorrow. Well, entering our 250th year as we celebrate New Year and celebrate 2026. And not to put you on the spot or anything, but you're celebrating it with the British.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think of that. So I will be at the British Ambassador's New Year's Eve party at the British Ambassador's residence, a truly beautiful piece of property. And I know they were our enemy 250 years ago in 1776 when January 1st of that year came. There was not a lot of love between the British and us here in the United States. But I'll tell you, now we are the closest allies, and we are very, very, together on a lot of things. So you know what? I do think we can let the past be the past and bygones be bygones. And I can still enjoy celebrating with some incredible people, patriots.
Right. You might just
on
have
both
to
sides of the pond.
Exactly.
Tomorrow
You
night.
may just have to remind them from time to time.
I might not post as much tomorrow about
2026, but we are also celebrating, a little America, as they say.
I won't be allowed back for 2027 if I do that. So
That's true. You got to be on your
honest.
best
I do
behavior.
want to keep my card for next year. So.
All right, fair enough. I respect that, Tony.
Again,
all right.
I'm kind of a sellout when it comes to things,
okay.
parties, and
love you,
and
buddy.
big checks.
We still love you. All right, so this is now you're taking a live look at that camera that's supposed to be showing a non-illuminated Washington Monument. Bottom right-hand side of the screen, that is some of the streets of New York City in Times Square. So we'll check back in
there'll be no room
on both of those cameras throughout the course of the next hour. First, though, right now, we have to talk about what Tony's been watching on this New Year's Eve.
And
a
I'll
couple
tell you,
of stories making headlines today, including some from Hollywood, the sports world, and beyond.
Yep, and again, this balances, we have a little bit of different rundown, keeping it shorter tonight because we have a lot of interviews. We have like the record 4, I think. So we're going to start here in D.C. with a federal judge dealing President Trump and his administration a major setback today, ordering the administration to continue funding the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Judge Amy Berman Jackson rejected the White House's argument that the agency can't be funded because the Federal Reserve and the CFPB is operating at a loss, writing this would be tantamount to closing what is left of the Bureau. The CFPB was created after the 2008 financial crisis to protect consumers against fraud and predatory practices. In other federal news, the U.S. Postal Service, which is going to another agency today, is implementing major changes to postmark rules starting on January 5th. Only mail deposited directly at post offices before the last collection time will receive a same-day postmark. Mail dropped in blue collection boxes will be postmarked the following business day. Underline that piece. Critics warn it could cause missed delays for time-sensitive documents like bill payments and legal filings. Consumer advocates recommend using certified mail for important mailings starting on January 5th. In the world of medicine, the flu is surging nationwide with hospitalizations nearly doubling in a single week. The CDC reports 32 states now have high or very high flu activity, up from just 17 the week before. Hospitalizations jumped to over 19,000, up from 10,000 the prior week, and at least 7.5 million people have become sick since the season began in October, and about 3,100 have died of the flu. Turning to the sports world, New England Patriots wide receiver Stefon Diggs was charged today with felony strangulation and misdemeanor assault stemming from a December 2nd incident. Diggs is accused of assaulting his private chef during a wage dispute. The 32-year-old denies all allegations through his attorney, calling them unsubstantiated. The Patriots say they're cooperating with authorities, and Diggs is scheduled for arraignment on January 23rd. The nation is mourning the loss of Tatiana Schlossberg tonight. The environmental journalist and granddaughter of President John F. Kennedy died today at age 35 after battling terminal leukemia. Schlossberg revealed her diagnosis in a November New Yorker essay, writing movingly about her young children and adding a new tragedy to her family's story. She worked as a climate reporter for the New York Times and authored a 2019 book, Inconspicuous Consumption. She's survived by her husband, her 2 young children, and her mother, former Ambassador Caroline Kennedy. Hollywood is also mourning tonight. Acclaimed actor Isaiah Whitlock Jr., best known for his role as State Senator Clay Davis on HBO's The Wire, died today at age 71 after a brief illness. Whitlock's portrayal of a corrupt politician became one of the most memorable characters in the acclaimed series. And finally, residents of Haverhill, Massachusetts, one of my hometowns, by the way, brought an unusual complaint to their city council: the overwhelming smell of donuts. The new Dunkin' Donuts manufacturing facility produces 1 million donuts daily near the neighborhood, and neighbors say the constant aroma is distracting and heavy, quote unquote. While some find it pleasant, others are concerned about the intensity of it. The city council ordered health inspectors to investigate, and will be processing complaints in the new year. The story went viral on social media, with many mocking the complaints about constant donut smell, including me in my little new news series that I do online, where I talked about my experience living next to a wastewater treatment plant.
So it
Where
could
I
be
got
worse,
rotten
is what
eggs
you're
is my
saying.
smell.
Yeah, so it could always be worse, is what
just
you're trying
saying,
to say.
and also want to give just major prayers to the families of Tatiana Schlossberg tonight, as well as Isaiah Whitlock Jr.
Yeah,
just
and
a truly sad day.
Obviously,
on many fronts for that.
beyond he was
family.
he was a standout character in The Wire, but he was also in Veep. And obviously, both of those shows have some ties here for people in Maryland, the district, and Virginia and beyond. So obviously, both shows were filmed in Baltimore. Obviously, there were some DMV ties as well. And of course, going back to the story about Stefon Diggs, he's from right here in Gaithersburg, Maryland.
He
so
sure
some
is.
local ties on that story as well. Tony, you mentioned it is a busy night, and we want to keep this train rolling.
I know.
So we're going to take you back to a live picture from Times Square. You see that camera moving. They're showing those 2026, the Happy New Year, all lit up.
Kia's got that one.
Coming up next, we are going to talk about what happens after that ball drops, because for a lot of people, it is going to be dry January. We're going to talk about some of the benefits of that and also mindful drinking. And we're going to do it with one of the preeminent voices in the mindful drinking movement, Derek Brown, author and advocate. He's going to join us live coming up next. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the live Zone Primetime on this Tuesday night,
Yeah,
New
Tuesday,
Year's Eve, taking a live picture of the streets of New York City, Times Square, where about 1 million people will gather to ring in the new year tomorrow night. And for a lot of people, the champagne toast at midnight tomorrow could be the last drop of alcohol that they have for a little while, because a lot of people are leaning into the trend of dry January. It will have arrived. The month-long break from booze has been a big trend for several years. More and more people are actually choosing to make it a year-round thing, as a matter of fact. So tonight we're talking to someone who knows all about it. I'm talking about mindful drinking expert, beverage expert, award-winning author, and mindful drinking advocate, Derek Brown. He is also a very good friend to Fox 5, and tonight he joins us live, making his primetime, live Zone Primetime debut. Right. Derek, thank you so much for joining us and spending some time with us here.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Tony. How y'all doing? It seems like it's been about a year since I've seen you. That was last dry January, right?
That sounds about right. So first and foremost, Derek, do you have any plans for New Year's?
Do I? I'm sorry. Could you repeat it?
Yeah. Do you have any plans for New Year's?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to sit at home and drink a non-alcoholic bubbly. So maybe I'm not the most fun person, but it's going to be a delicious one.
But
I love that.
That's okay, because a lot of people are obviously on that kind of same train, including the guy in this directly below me in this box. He's not a drinker. Below. So, you know, if they're planning on celebrating just like you, Derek, first and foremost, do you have any like drink recommendations, or not just like non-alcoholic cocktails, but there's a lot of like spirit-removed champagnes and things like that too?
Yeah, keep it simple. I think that's the easiest way to do it. I'll pick like a really nice bubbly. You know, this one is non-alcoholic. Called Varnum. It's from Oregon, 2023. You could make it into a simple cocktail, you know? So an example of that is I actually brought all the ingredients. You want me to make it now?
Yeah, might as well.
Hey, we like immersive, engaged demonstrations. This is good.
Absolutely.
Immersive, engaged demonstration. All right, well, the first thing you got to get is a sugar cube.
All right.
And you just drop it in the glass. And so that makes it really simple. Take some bitters, your favorite bitters. I've got some orange cardamom bitters here, right? So it adds like a nice flavor to it, a little bitterness on the end, a little bit of structure to the cocktail. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to put about 12 drops in there. That's it. And then the next step is really simple. You just pour it in. And so what happens is it gets nice and fizzy. You'll see it's going to get a beautiful color. I'm hoping I don't go over the top. Oh, perfect pour.
Perfect pour.
On TV, it's live, folks, by the way. That is not pre-recorded.
And then the last thing, I'm just going to take a lemon peel, right? I just cut the end of the lemon peel, and I spray it on there, and I'm going to put it on the side. And that's it. Took about, what, a minute 30 to make a delicious cocktail that you can have for New Year's.
Exactly. That sounds perfect. It looks perfect.
I'd love to be doing that.
Before we dive into dry January, the benefits, mindful drinking, and everything like that, can you explain to me, you know, we connected offline over email, and I talked about this. So my wife is pregnant, 9 months pregnant, as a matter of fact. So we have explored.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We have explored some of the, you know, non-alcoholic drinks out there, the, you know, spirits, the alcohol removed spirits. And the one thing we have found is the bitter ones, the phony Negronis, and the, you know, the sparkling ones, kind of really more so than for people who have drank before, they really replicate the taste and like kind of the texture better than the others. Have you found that as well?
100%. Yeah, you get that bite, and the carbonation adds some texture to it. So all of those are kind of replicate that alcohol experience, which is a lot of times what people miss when they give up alcohol. So it makes a lot of sense. In fact, it's interesting because 90% of the people who purchase non-alcoholic products, like yourself, drink alcohol. So that makes a lot of sense that you would try to have these products that, you know, in some way mimic it. But I think what you're also alluding to is that there's a lot of inconsistencies, right? There's some great products, there's some bad products. The only thing that I can compare that to is every alcohol. Every alcohol has good and bad products.
Most products are like that.
Yeah, very, very true.
Any product.
There's a dramatic difference between some of those bottom shelf ones and some of those top shelf ones.
That's right. And so my only advice is don't give up, right? Just because you found one product that's not as good as what you'd like it to be, There are so many products to try. Now, they're expensive. I get that. So, maybe seek some advice from an expert. But overall, go to a bottle shop. There's like some great bottle shops in Washington, D.C., like Binge Bar. You can go there and purchase non-alcoholic products, and they can lead you to exactly what you want.
What I really want to ask, and this is a big question that Gen Z and some of the, I'd say later millennials have, is with the increase in Gen Z and younger generations not drinking as much, there is some stigma attached to that, especially for young men and just young people generally. What are some of the ways people can deal with the stigma of not drinking while also leveraging great tasting non-alcoholic beverages when they bring that over or they're drinking it? How can they handle the potential back and forth, oh, you're not drinking? And how can they handle that back and forth to be confident in their choices and also stay healthy with these great choices?
Absolutely. Alcohol is the only drug that you have to apologize for not drinking and tell your entire life story.
Yeah, thank you.
So, but here's the good news, and then I'm going to answer your question, is that 3 in 4 people from Gen Z this year in 2025 during Dry January planned to abstain from in some form non-alcohol or from alcohol. So that sometimes means dry January, sometimes means dryish January. So there's a huge contingent of people out there just like you that are not drinking or trying non-alcoholic products. So I think that's a great place to start. It is what I call socially legible. You say, somebody asks you, why aren't you drinking? You say, dry January. It pretty much ends the conversation.
Yeah.
But what I want to also share with you is that you don't need to tell people anything. Right? At the end of the day, you do not have to justify what you drink, eat to any person. So if somebody's getting nosy about it, feel free to tell them that your favorite bartender, Derek Brown, said, I don't have to tell you anything. So that's one part.
I love that.
But actually, people do give you pressure, and that's one of the reasons why I advocate for mindful drinking. Right? I'm trying to help alleviate that pressure, and I think part of that is bringing delicious non-alcoholic products. Not being judgmental, because I think sometimes people are that way because they think that you're judging them, right? That you're saying, I don't drink alcohol and you are a drunk. And I think that can feel a little bad. So they kind of preempt it by, making fun of your status. So I think, being non-judgmental, offering delicious alternatives, and just overall having some confidence in yourself and realizing it's a choice you made for yourself and you don't have to justify it.
And I just piggybacking off of that too, and I would just like to also add that for people who may drink and may host parties, it is kind of nice to have an option for people who may not want to as well. And for people like me, I had to learn more about these products because I didn't necessarily know about them the same way you might go into a store and just pick up a 6-pack of whatever. Right. So I love that you're doing this too. But Derek, just kind of piggybacking also off of what Tony said and how Gen Z has really reevaluated its relationship with alcohol. A, why do you think that is? And then B, can you talk to me a little bit about some of the side effects that has had on both the restaurant industry, the bar industry? And we just reported last week or earlier this week too that Jim Beam was halting production.
Yeah, part of me feels like it's because I stopped drinking bourbon. But,
yeah, don't worry.
So I apologize.
I'm carrying your load, Derek.
The impact is strong.
But, okay, listen, I think that there's a plethora of reasons. One of them is that people are just more aware of health and wellness, right? There's just more information out there. You can go on TikTok and there's a million influencers talking about it. You can, read it in, whatever publication you usually read, newspaper, magazine, and of course shows like your own where you're actually, talking about it on air. And I think that that's leading people to be more concerned about how they drink. That's part of it. I think part of it is also the fact that there's a surveillance generation, right? So because there's always a camera out. You don't want to be the drunkest person at the party, right? You don't no longer want to put the lampshade on your head and dance on the table because somebody's going to take a video of it and that's going to go viral and then who knows what's going to happen. So I think that is part of it. And then the last thing I'm going to say is Gen Z is trading off for other products. So for instance, cannabis, they have cannabis drinks with THC or CBD, they have gummies, that sort of thing. So I think that's at least 3 reasons, and I'm sure that there are more than that.
Now, when we think about just like overall the alcohol consumption and things of that nature. What are some of the drinks that people who may want to start this process of abstaining or mindful drinking, what are some of the first choices they should make with non-alcoholic beverages? Should it be a beer? Should it be a mocktail that could be a little more expensive? Or should it be a champagne or a wine, for example? It's everywhere now. You can get these type of products with every persona, basically.
It's exactly in that order. I think beer is the first thing that if you do enjoy beer, go for a beer because it's already only 5% alcohol. That means always 95% of it was water and hops. So going the extra 5% doesn't really change the flavor dramatically. And so, and you can get your favorite, there's wonderful products like Athletic out there, or you can get your favorite, beer that has a non-alcoholic version, Heineken, Guinness, that sort of thing. So I think there's lots of options. I mean, when I go to the store now, there's at least 4 or 5 different non-alcoholic beers, some of them craft, some of them more conventional. So I think that's a great choice, and you're probably not going to go wrong. Second to that, I would say try non-alcoholic cocktails. There's lots of great ones, but go to a place that you really think can make them well. I know they're expensive, right? And I have to tell you, some of these products are not cheap. So that's the reason that they're expensive. So people are like, oh, well, I don't want to buy them because they're the same cost as regular cocktails. But you're not paying for the buzz, you're paying for the craft. And I think that that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
So go to a place like Allegory, right? Or Your Only Friend, or some of these places, Central, or Ama. These are places that make, and then they're local, they make great non-alcoholic cocktails. You will not be let down. So I think that's the second place. And then non-alcoholic wine, because I think non-alcoholic wine can be a little bit more inconsistent in the quality. But if you stick with sparkling, that's going to be good, right?
Okay.
Most of the sparkling wines, non-alcoholic wines, are delicious. And I think that you can find them in a grocery store like Gießen. It's a New Zealand winery, or like I mentioned earlier, this one, Varnum, which is from Oregon. I get no money for saying so. I just like it. And I think that, ultimately you can even make non-alcoholic cocktails at home. They're easy.
Exactly.
I showed you how.
As you demonstrated.
And still have the craft.
Exactly. Derek, if people want to learn more about mindful drinking and mindful mixology, where can they follow you? Where can they pick up a copy of the book?
Great. Well, I think go to your favorite independent bookstore and get Mindful Mixology. You can go to my website, positivedamageinc.com, so positivedamageinc.com. And I created a course at the National Academy of Sports Medicine, NASM, on mindful drinking. So if you're curious to go a little bit deeper, that's the right option for you.
I think that's great. Oh
That's
my God.
awesome. Derek, thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight. A happy, healthy new year to you and your loved ones.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for the advice. This is awesome.
Happy New Year, guys. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
We'll check back in with you again soon as well. In the meantime, we're going to take you back live to Times Square, where you see the ball all lit up. Coming up on the other side of the break. Now, health and fitness. That is one of the things people always like to make resolutions about when it comes to a new year. The other, money, finances. So we're going to talk about some of the top financial resolutions in 2026 coming up when Chip Lupo from Wallet Hub joins us live next. We'll be right back.
I got a lot of questions.
All right, we're back here on the Live Zone Primetime. What did I do? What the hell?
We're
All right,
heading
let's
into
go
the stratosphere.
there. That'll help. That's a good start, right? All right, there's your live look at Times Square once again. Let's give you another live look at Times Square just to shake things up a little bit. But look, like I said as we headed to break, most New Year resolutions revolve around two things, Tony P, fitness and finances. Tonight we're talking about the latter, this time around at least, because a new Wallet Hub survey shows more than 25% of Americans plan to make finance-related resolutions this year. So for more on this survey and the most popular financial resolutions people will make, Wallet Hub writer and analyst Chip Lupo joins us now live. Chip, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the Live Zone Primetime.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
All right, so Chip, does the fact that we make money-related resolutions every single year mean that we fail at them every single year, or we have to start over at the beginning?
That's a tough question. Oh my God.
A lot of the cases that's so. Now, some people just want to do better. Some people make a resolution to save and do well, and then say, well, if we were able to save 25% of our income, why not 30? But in a lot of cases, what's funny is that people that make financial resolutions for the new year, they manage to do reasonably well for the first 10 and a half months of the year. But then once Black Friday hits and the holiday shopping season, it seems all that good work has gone right out the window, and then you find yourself right back where you started. And it's even become more complicated nowadays because of this post-inflationary economy that we're digging ourselves out of, so many people are relying on their credit cards for everyday expenses. Now you have that debt on top of your holiday spending, so that's an even bigger hole to dig out of.
So let me ask you this. So a big concern for Gen Z, especially people like me, is that we set a budget during the month and then we don't always hit it. We kind of get a little bit over it, or we have recurring charges, things that just kind of add up, right? What are some ways that people can really budget effectively, during one day or 1 week or 1 month to keep themselves on track to hit those yearly goals? Because so many people can't get it done on the micro level, and then we wonder, oh my God, why did we go way over for our yearly budget or goals or things of that nature?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because the budgeting is the cornerstone to any financial related resolution. That's the bedrock, because it's like if you were learning to play a sport or a musical instrument, you once you master the fundamentals, then you can be successful. And budgeting is ground zero for the fundamentals. But what you can do is now Wallet Hub, as a personal finance website, and others do have budgeting apps, as opposed to now some people like my mother and my father-in-law still have their little notebook that they write down everything that comes in, everything that goes out, and you don't always catch everything. Or some people have graduated, so to speak, to spreadsheets. But a budgeting app will allow you to just plug in information, and you can tailor it to give you notifications. It's like, we're anticipating that you may be short this month. Consider A, B, or C, whether it's maybe doing away with a daily trip to Starbucks, or maybe cutting loose some recurring expenses, such as the trial streaming service that expired 6 months ago and you're still paying.
Yeah.
Or the gym membership that you no longer use. So budgeting apps are a good way to go. That's the most effective way to stay on top of your budget and have a better idea and be able to better keep track of your expenses and all of your income as well.
Chip, can you break down some of the key findings from this financial resolution survey that Wallet Hub did for us?
Yeah, it's interesting. As you led off, more than 1 in 4 Americans that we surveyed are planning on making finance-related New Year's resolutions. Again, that's an encouraging sign. 31% of them say that making a financial resolution, they want to save more. So that's the most important thing to them. Now, as we are getting into the new year, we found that 3 in 5 Americans expect to spend less money on New Year's plans this year compared to last year. Inflation is still on everyone's mind, too. We found that more than half of Americans say inflation is still their biggest financial concern for 2026. Now, I found this to be somewhat relative, because I'm looking at this from the perspective of your average everyday consumer who goes out, no matter where you live, where cost of living might still be high, Groceries, for the most part, are lower. Gas prices are dipping downward in a lot of places. So I would say in that respect, inflation is kind of leveling off and working in favor of the consumers. Now, on the other hand, you mentioned Gen Z a second ago. If your objective is to purchase a new home or even a new or used vehicle, inflation, that's probably not going to be in your best interest right now.
When you look at just kind of, it's like structuring a household budget or just kind of thinking about purchasing in general, right? If someone's going to buy something that might be a little bit on the border of what they can afford, or they're just making consistent purchases that are adding up, what's a process that a person can go through to maybe make sure the purchase is a correct one, or if they find out it's not, maybe not make that purchase and not add to that budget or that debt that could come from it?
Well, if you're making like a separate purchase outside of your budget, consider, well, first thing you want to do ideally is to save more, have a separate savings account for a big ticket item or an emergency expense, or consider applying for a credit card with a 0% interest rate, introductory rate that will allow you to pay that off interest free for anywhere from 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, depending on the card. But if you go that route, you want to make sure that you pay that balance off in full before the promotional rate ends, because otherwise, with an average interest rate of about 22-23%, assuming you have good credit, that's going to apply to your unpaid balance. So that purchase may wind up costing you more in the long run if you don't pay it off on time.
So Chip, I know you guys put together a list of the 16 most popular resolutions, but in addition to that, you also did a blueprint for how to kind of stick to them. Can you give us like maybe the top 2 or 3 of those resolutions?
Right, now we talked about the budgeting, so you want to create a realistic budget, stick to it, save more money. Consider interest rate accounts. Now, too many people have their funds in traditional checking accounts that are giving them next to nothing in interest. So look at high yield savings accounts or CDs to earn more, up to 4%. Interest rates are still pretty good for those. But if you're going a CD, you want to make sure that it's money that you don't necessarily need in the short term, because there are penalties involved. Explore other ways to maybe refinance. You can negotiate your credit card interest rates with your lender, just like with a mortgage. You want to make sure
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow,
but you want to make sure that, of course, they're not going to advertise that, but you have to reach out to them. So, but you can negotiate a lower rate, but you do want to make sure that you have good credit and a solid payment history with that lender, and then you might be able to work something out there. Also, consider joining a credit union. Credit unions, as opposed to traditional banks, offer lower fees and better rates, so you can save and borrow more efficiently. And finally, one thing that I consider to be very important is give yourself an A in financial literacy. Now, a lot of Americans will admit that their financial knowledge is pretty poor. So test your knowledge on basic financial literacy, whether through an online course or through your financial institution, where you can basically learn how to set a budget, learn how to balance a checkbook, learn how simple interest works, those types of things. And as I mentioned before, those are the fundamentals. And if you master the fundamentals, then you can be successful.
Yeah. Well, that's a great analogy, especially for people who love sports. They can understand that, building that foundation, and then just building off of that.
Or just marry somebody smarter and more responsible than you, like I did.
I don't know if that would be Chip's suggestion, but
maybe not. But it works every now and then.
It does. Though it does.
Chip, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to check out the full list and they want to follow along for more details, how do they do it?
Just log on to wallethub.com and check out our New Year's Financial Resolution Survey and our 16 financial resolutions for 2026.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us, and have a happy new year, a happy, prosperous new year as well.
A year of savings.
Same to you guys. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Hollywood money, because we're going to talk about how the box office did in the year 2025, some of the hits, some of the misses, and also maybe what we can look forward to coming up here in 2026. Entertainment journalist Andrew Freund going to join us live coming up next. We'll be right back.
Vaya con Dios. It means goodbye, brother.
No, it doesn't.
Don't look at her. It does.
So that was a clip from the Minecraft movie, in case you didn't know. It hit theaters way back in April, and as of right now, keep in mind things could change, but we're kind of running out of time. But as of right now, it's looking like the highest grossing domestic movie of the year. But it wasn't exactly a great year at the box office, despite some high hopes. So tonight we wanted to look back at the year in Hollywood and look ahead at what 2026 could have in store. And so for some help, we want to turn to TV host, film critic, entertainment journalist, and content creator Andrew Freund, joining us now live from LA tonight. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Yeah, hey guys.
All right, so let's start with the box office overall. How would you kind of rank this year, and what do you think kind of contributed to the fact that it wasn't necessarily as big as Hollywood may have hoped?
Yeah, so this year the box office made around $8.76 billion. It was about a 1.6% increase than last year. However, we are still not at pre-pandemic levels. Just for comparison, pre-pandemic, the box office was regularly bringing in $10 to $11 billion a year. So we're still at a roughly 30% deficit. And really, I just attribute this to the post-pandemic era. People are just not going to the movies as much as they used to. They're used to the convenience of watching it at home, and they don't necessarily want to shell out, the money it costs to go to the theater, because quite frankly, it costs a lot more now to go to the movies than it did, let's say, in 2019.
In terms of the types of movies that were made this year from an artistic perspective, what are some of the maybe innovations that happen in 2025? Or what are some of the kind of relics that were brought back to the box office in terms of creativity or storytelling?
I mean, we're really seeing, like you showed with Minecraft, the kind of trend this year was family films and films based on video games did really well. I mean, we had family films like Minecraft, also a family film like How to Train Your Dragon, one of my favorite films, did super well. So that was kind of sort of the trend. And I will say, to bring it back to Minecraft, I covered the movie. I interviewed Jack and Jason. I remember sitting in the theater watching it, and I was like, what is this movie? But it's not really appealing to me. It's not appealing to my demo. So I wouldn't necessarily say there was a great artistic shift in 2025 in terms of the cinema. I just honestly think it comes down to people being smarter with their money and what they're going to do with it, and which movies they're going to pick to see based off either with their family or if it's just for them, sort of things like that.
So, Andrew, right now I have up the list of the top 10 domestic, highest grossing domestic movies from the box office. We mentioned a Minecraft movie, Lilo and Stitch, Superman, Jurassic World Rebirth, Wicked for Good, Zootopia 2, Sinners, The Fantastic Four, How to Train Your Dragon, Avatar, Fire, and Ash. Obviously that one in theaters now. On that list, we have 9 either sequels or remakes, a lot of comic book movies, a lot of franchises, Sinners being the one original Hollywood movie this year to make it to the top 10. Is that par for the course at this point? And is that upsetting for Hollywood, or do they just kind of know that's the case these days?
I mean, I think it's par for the course. These movies are really expensive to make. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. The studios don't necessarily want to take chances. They want ROI. However, that being said, take a movie like Weapons, for example. That movie cost $38 million. My friend Zach Krager wrote and directed it. It was a wild success. It made over $269 million. So sometimes you are going to have studios that will push through the kind of smaller films that are this huge success. And I really attribute that to really kind of the producers and the studio executives at the studio that want to take chances. But now we see these companies have to listen to their shareholders. The shareholders want profits. So they're going to, make an Avatar. They're going to make a Lilo and Stitch. I mean, we're going to see another Yeah, I mean, we're going to see another Moana movie next year. I remember covering Moana 2 last year, and they were shooting the live action one, which comes out next year. So, they're not really hedging their bets because, we're getting into dangerous territory, especially now with like Netflix possibly buying Warner Brothers, which if that happens, the theatrical window is going to shrink like this. And then once the theatrical windows of these films shrink, what happens to the box office? What happens to the theater owners? So, it's going to be an interesting time in 2026 for sure.
When you talk about the overall, just the state of this danger zone, right? Okay, we have the streaming and social media merging together. Do you think social media consumption and this concept of niche audiences and funneling down and keeping things tighter, is that influencing the kind of movies that are coming out? And if so, what are audiences looking for in terms of stories heading into 2026 that they want to see on the screen?
Yeah, it's funny. I just saw a movie that's coming out in January called People We Meet on Vacation. It's a Netflix rom-com. And that film was really fueled by, it's based off this young adult book, kind of like a Colleen Hoover type author.
Yeah.
And it's really fueled by TikTok. I mean, people on TikTok like these kinds of short stories, especially any kind of YA rom-com. I mean, we're seeing it right now with the heated rivalry craze. Which is also powered off a novel, which is also getting powered off of TikTok and social media.
Right.
So I think to answer your question is yeah, we are seeing the influence of social media coming into the cinemas. Also, some of these movies are a lot less expensive to make than like an Avatar, which costs, over $400 million.
So kind of going off of Tony's question there too, do you think the way we talk about the box office needs to change as entertainment journalists and things like that, just because we can't necessarily gauge success by the numbers that it used to do, or how many theaters it opened in, and how many theaters, the average gross in the theaters? How does Hollywood define success these days?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, Hollywood really does still define success by box office numbers, but I think that people are a lot savvier these days. Also, what you guys are doing right now, not to make this all meta, but having this streaming show, let's face it, broadcast numbers are not going up.
Yeah.
So there's shows like this that we're doing right now where people are watching, that you can actually change the conversation and be a lot more honest versus, when I go on some of the other networks, I'm always honest, but it's a little bit more, polished sound bites, talking points, that kind of thing. I don't think audiences want that anymore. I think they want kind of this interaction. And in terms of myself being an entertainment journalist, they just want honesty, and they don't want canned sound bites. I guess that's what I'm kind of trying to say.
That makes a lot of sense.
We
to be honest
appreciate
with you.
that.
And that is something that Tony, Tony is a social media personality here,
just like you.
Not just in the DMV, but beyond too. And one of the things that we talk about is the authenticity that social media brings, and I think that's what people look for, and that's what we try to bring here, streaming as well.
Now, when talking about, I think, just the actors and the type of acting and that pipeline that happens in Hollywood, right? As you look into 2026, are there certain stars or places, or sources of stars and acting that you see as being the new pipeline with social media coming in? We saw Ethan Hawke last year talk about follower count for social media people mattering to getting roles in Hollywood. Do you see this whole changing of the guard impacting how acting is done, how careers are shaped, or do you still see some of the same stars lasting longer and the pipeline still being the same?
Honestly, this makes me think of. I'm going to use Marty Supreme as an example.
Yeah.
In terms of the marketing of that film.
Right.
That film, not a big budget. It came out the first weekend. It made $875,000 on only 6 screens.
Wow.
Now, one of the reasons why it made that much money is because Timothée Chalamet, who's only 30 years old, was willing to do kind of these crazy stunts to promote the film. If you take, let's say, an older actor, they're not willing to do that stuff. They're not willing to go on a blimp. They're not willing to go on the top of the sphere like he did. They're not. So I really think that it's going to come down to marketing and the younger talent like a Timothy Chalamet who's willing to kind of do more random like I have a show, for example, that I host for Waymo. I interview celebrities in a Waymo. It's a talk show.
That is brilliant,
And
by the way.
it's fun. It's
Great
really
marketing
fun.
and great for the host. It's so cool.
I mean, it's a win. I love it, but I will say that sometimes it's hard to get people the concept. They just don't quite get it. I mean, we've been very fortunate. I've had amazing guests on the show, but in terms of like the acting, I really think it's going to come down to which actors are willing to promote their projects in kind of a different kind of way. Because I've done thousands of press junkets like for the past 17 years. Press junkets aren't moving any needle. Like every once in a while, you'll get the viral moment. I've had some, other friends have had some, but in 2026, I mean, the press junket's not doing much.
Right.
But you have Timothy Chalamet on top of the Sphere, or like I had June Squibb, who's 95 years old, in my Waymo. That could maybe move some needles.
That gets
you
some
know?
eyeballs.
That's great.
And, you know, to that end, you know, we saw Leonardo DiCaprio out talking about this, you know, one battle after another,
Right.
doing TikToks and things that man has never had to do in his life, which kind of plays into that
Yeah.
idea of just the name and the idea of this Hollywood star kind of equalizing to a certain extent, and the people who can promote it,
Right.
like you said. Okay, so before we get too far into the future,
Yes.
for those of us who may not have made it to the movies as often as you or have seen as much as you, share some of your favorites from 2025
Like
that we
that.
need to add to our must-watch list
Great question.
before award season kicks off.
Well, you mentioned Leo. So Leo has one battle after another. Huge award season, darling. It's nominated for everything. I'm a member of Critics' Choice. We have our award show coming up on Sunday on E. Watch it, plugging our show.
Yes.
So one battle after another. Sinners, you mentioned. My friend Zach's movie Weapons, which I loved. I also loved How to Train Your Dragon. I didn't necessarily think that movie was for me, but it's a amazing, wonderful family film that everyone should go see. I'm trying to think. I wrote down. Also K-pop Demon Hunters, if you live under a rock. K-pop Demon Hunters, which was Netflix's biggest movie of all time. Wildly successful. Also, I had the star on my show, so you should watch that.
Yes.
And Marty Supreme, like we were talking about, also a great film with Timothy Chalamet.
Now, when it comes to watching any of these movies or just going into the process of being a good movie watcher, let's say a movie is out on streaming and it can also potentially be in theaters. How can a person go through the process saying which movie I'm going to go see in a theater versus which one I'm going to experience on streaming? Are there certain characteristics that a film has that may be better in a theater versus a streaming environment?
Do you want the soundbite answer or the real?
Give me the real one.
Let me just say before you give your answer.
It's kind of a weird question. I apologize.
Over the Christmas break, I watched Formula One and I watched Jay Kelly. One of those I wish I had seen in a theater.
Yeah. Jay Kelly, you can watch at home. It's Netflix. That's fine. I did see Formula One in the theater, and it was mesmerizing because, I mean, it was like you were in the freaking car. I mean, it was shaking.
Wow.
But I will admit to you guys that last night I had not seen the new Avatar movie, and we get all the screeners. So I watched the new Avatar movie at home, and it was just not the same.
Yeah.
Because I'm distracted. I'm on my phone. I'm looking, and I mean, James Cameron would probably murder me right now. So it goes. I would say, like, if you can see a film in big format, like 70 millimeter or IMAX, and obviously that is more expensive, but if you're willing to, if those films are available in the larger formats, I would say go see it. Like Sinners in IMAX, incredible. Okay. I wish I would have seen Avatar in IMAX, quite frankly, instead of watching it at home last night. So I think when deciding what you're going to watch at home versus the theaters, if it's big action epic, I would, try. Or, like I read a quote today from the head of IMAX. Normally they were only into kind of these big action superhero movies, but they've expanded and they put family films in there and also horror movies. So if you're a big horror fan and want to be scared on a big screen, I would definitely go.
Got it.
Oh,
That's
Oh, okay, we're back.
That's crucial because we all don't know sometimes what can maybe push us to the theaters.
Yeah,
maybe we
and
can help
I-
with that process.
I think, like you said, I think that idea of making it a big screen experience and emphasis on big is going to be huge in 2026. Okay, we're down to our final less than 2 minutes.
less than 2.
One movie you're super excited about to see in 2026 and where people can follow you for your Waymo show and more.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 movies. One is Avengers Doomsday coming out the end of the year. Can't wait. Also, Devil Wears Prada 2. Can't wait. Highly anticipated sequel. You can find my Waymo show on all of Waymo's socials, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. You can find me on my Instagram at Andrew Freund. I post everything. Lots of new Waymos coming. Next week, I'm going to CES with Waymo. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh, that'll
lots
be
coming
fun
for
too.
that.
All right. Well,
So cool.
please stay in touch because we'd love to catch up with you some more. Andrew Freund, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Live Zone Primetime. Happy New Year. Enjoy the theater, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
awesome.
All right, Tony P.
Man,
You know what I'm also really
I could have
excited
asked 5
for?
other questions
I'm
to him.
excited for Supergirl because obviously I'm a huge Superman fan, and
Yes.
this is James Gunn's
Yeah, baby.
take on this whole DC universe. Also Avengers, like he said, obviously those trailers have been kind of trickling out as we go.
Exactly, been kind of
and
sucking
then
us in.
the Odyssey with Christopher Nolan. and
Yes.
we watched that trailer, so. You know, I think there will always be a reason to go to the movie, but
Right.
he's right that it's easier to watch it at home.
It is, and that was kind of my goal with that question, was to kind of give people, hey, here's a roadmap to actually have a hybrid approach and go to the movies. What I'm fascinated in 2026, will the films get shorter with the invention of vertical watching
I
on
do
phones?
think that is going to be
and
a
our
big thing.
attention spans, will
I
they be
know.
shorter now?
Nothing beats a 90-minute rom-com. That's
Probably
why
shorter,
Netflix
minute
has that whole
10.
category. All right, thank you to everyone who joined us tonight here on the Live Zone Primetime. We'll be back tomorrow night. We'll celebrate
sir.
New Year's Eve. We'll ring it in, 9
be in
p.m.
my
style.
tux.
Let's do it.
Can't wait.
News at 10 coming up next on Fox Local. Thanks for watching.